Hello, hello. I am your host, Lara Cooper, host of The Accelerator. This is our second time going through the intro because I thought I hit record and I did not. So we're starting out with a smile. I have a very special guest today, Craig Taylor. He's co-founder of Cyberhoot and an entrepreneur. And before we get into the dirty details of cybersecurity and every question that business owners should be asking themselves, I'd love to hear a little bit about your story, Craig, how you got to the position where you're at now, not only as a business owner, but someone that's providing all this practical support to other business owners.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Lara, 20 years ago, I was enrolled in Teachers College, and I have a degree in psychology, which when you add those things up, it doesn't add to a cybersecurity founder, does it very much? But what I did when I graduated college 28 years ago is I started in cybersecurity, and I was working throughout the last 30 years in cybersecurity, teaching people cyber literacy skills. And about 10 years ago, I went through a difficult time. I was fired from a position at a Fortune 500 company, and I had to reevaluate where I was, what I wanted to do with my life. And I thought, hey, I have the skills now of cyber literacy and how to teach people what they need to know. I have the training, the formal training in psychology on how to teach people and how they learn best, positive reinforcement training versus, quite frankly, what the entire industry does with fish testing is negative reinforcement trainings, like using a shock collar to teach a dog. It might work, but it's not fun for anybody. We use treats at Cyberhoot. So we treat-based training, train a dog with treats.
I
They
like
love
that.
it. You love it. Everybody's happy. So I took the best of both of my backgrounds, my psychology and my cyber literacy and cybersecurity training, combined them to found Cyberhoot to teach the world cyber literacy skills. You're familiar with computer literacy. That's I can run a keyboard, mouse, calendar, email, but can I do it safely and securely? Probably not. No one teaches these skills. So that's what Cyberhoot was founded on, how I came to this point, and it's been an amazing ride. I'm loving it every day.
Nice. It's pretty amazing how the best ideas or the best experiences come from a few somewhat, what some people might call failures. That definitely happened for us as well, where you kind of found the right seat in how to apply your knowledge and your experience.
It's exactly
Um,
right.
and coming from someone, obviously from a CPA firm that has very sensitive data, it's important for every business owner really to have some security policies in place. And I like that you mentioned cyber literacy because it's so easy to hand it off and just say, oh, I have a tech guy or I have this and I trust them to take care of it. But at the end of the day, as a business owner, we're ultimately responsible for the policies that are in place and if they're being followed and how. And so I like that that's one of your focuses.
Larry, you hit on a very important point, which I'd like to emphasize. For too long, cyber security was looked at as the IT problem.
Mm-hmm.
Hire the IT director, he'll take care of it. It's not the IT director's problem to solve. It's the business owner's problem. It's the leaders of the company. They own cybersecurity. And we're seeing actually the maturation of the cybersecurity industry, which, by the way, is a very immature industry. It's like medicine was 100 years ago with quacks selling, this solution and that silver bullet that don't really exist or work. There's still that happening today in cybersecurity. But FINRA, you're in financial services,
Mm-hmm.
so you know that there's oversight now that's saying, hey, cyber security is a board responsibility. You have to, in the state of New York, have to hire a CISO, a chief information security officer, to guide your firm's cybersecurity, and they have to report into the board, not the CEO or the IT director. It's got to be top heavy and focused on the folks at the top of the organization. So there's this idea that cybersecurity is maturing as an industry, but it's got a long way to go, to be honest.
That's a good point. And to that end, how do you identify those quacks if you don't have financial, or not financial, but computer literacy or security literacy yourself? Um, some people are very good at selling themselves. And so I'm sure even just that little shortcut to education has
Yeah,
to help people even vet out the teams that they select.
realize, I think, as a business owner listening to this podcast, realize that there is no silver bullet. There's we call cybersecurity programs defense in depth programs, meaning there are fail safes and there are redundant systems and redundant methods to secure your business. You have to start most often with the person in the chair, the human firewall, because they're liable to click on anything. And one
Mm-hmm.
click can sink the entire business if you're not doing enough from a technical perspective. But even the best technology can still be circumvented with a single click. So yeah, you have to treat the end user in the chair, the human firewall, with training and testing and governance policies. You need a technical stack that protects the user from themselves. You should remove administrative rights from all your users, for example. Many accounting firms don't have strong technical experience, so they might not know that. If you have an MSP, which is a managed service provider who's looking after your technology, quite likely they've removed the administrative rights from your end users. So if they click, they don't have all the privileges in the world to damage everything. They might just harm their own computer, and it might be limited there. There's technical protections. For the worst case scenario, you have life insurance, probably, you have car insurance, you need cyber insurance because catastrophes happen and you need to get on your feet quickly. So
Mm-hmm.
that's when a real disaster occurs. You can call on that cyber insurance firm to help you recover from a ransomware event or from some business email compromise, some really significant security breach. Here's a question for you, Lara, and for your users, for your listeners out there. Name the top three economies of the world for last year. It's not a trick question. Just what are the top three economies
Oh
in the world?
gosh, I'm not great under pressure. Can you answer for me?
The United States had the biggest global economy in the world. China had the second largest economy. The third was cybercrime. Before any
Interesting.
other country in the world, cybercrime generated more income and revenue, only second and only third to the China and Canadian and American economies. That's a shocking statistic.
Incredible.
How do they get that money? Wire fraud, which folks in your business are probably central to, ransomware, all kinds of different ransomware, business email compromise, extorting money from victims, essentially.
That's, I mean, really, really terrible that we even need an industry around protecting ourselves from this. But the good thing is there is an industry to protect
Yeah.
ourselves from this. So tell me, um, I'm curious because this is something you kind of left as a teaser before we met, but you said that you have the most interesting cybersecurity incident that you've managed in 25 years. So I'd love to hear what that
Oh,
is, and then we'll break it down to what's the typical thing that we need to protect
yeah.
ourselves
So this
from.
one is interesting, probably from a like a just from an esoteric perspective. But one time, I guess about a decade ago, I was responsible for an incident that occurred on my watch. I was working for a Fortune 500 company. They were managing the IT infrastructure for a major city in the New England area. And we learned that their ambulance dispatch server was compromised. It was just there was remote hackers logged into it. They were using it for maybe Bitcoin mining. Who knows? There was a lot of different malware at the time that it could have been. It wasn't ransoming the system. The system was operational, but we knew there were bad actors in the system. And the first reaction by our leadership was take it offline. We don't want them spreading into the network. I'm like, whoa, what's our first order of business in any incident? It's the preservation of human life. Can we dispatch ambulances with another system? Do we have a backup system somewhere? No. Okay, there's a key finding for the recovery. When we get to recovery, we want to make sure that this doesn't happen again. We want to find a secondary system that we can employ in this ambulance dispatch. So, but at the time, I convinced the leadership keep the system running, build a separate one immediately beside it, and when it's ready to take over delivering or dispatching ambulances across the city, you can take this one offline. But we can't since it's functioning. Now, if it wasn't functioning or if it was sending ambulances to the wrong place, that's a different story altogether. But while it was functioning, we built another one, put it in place, and Bob's your uncle. We were back in business.
Nice. I mean, that's obviously a very high stress scenario where you're dealing with lives and in emergency situations, but that's a great guiding hand to have, to think, okay, hold on, before we react, what's the best way to handle this? So
And
I see why.
we called out our policy, right? We have a cybersecurity incident management policy that was drafted for our business, and it called out the protection of human life is always the first role in an incident. Is there
Mm-hmm.
anyone that could be harmed by taking any action on this or inaction? And if once you answer that, then you can move into the standard 5 steps of an incident: are identification, eradication, no, sorry, containment, eradication, recovery, and revision. The revision is where you'd say, hey, we should have two systems that we can put one back in place when one is dead or something happened to it. So yeah, it was a very interesting story, but I use it to this day when we do consulting with businesses, CPA firms, to talk about, their systems, their redundancies. How do they handle an incident? Do they need a virtual or fractional CISO to help guide the development of these processes and the policies and implement the technology in a way that protects that critical data that's entrusted to you? Because you're no different than a bank, for example. Banks spend
Mm-hmm.
unlimited sums to protect their name because that's all they have to sell to their clients. You trust this bank because they never have incidents. If you had a bank that had an incident, you'd move your money somewhere else. The same is probably true for CPA firms and similar financial firms. They don't want the bad or negative reputational damage from a cyber incident, right? You put my
Mm-hmm.
credit card out there, you put my social insurance number, you put my tax forms out there. Oh my gosh, I'll never use you again. That's what will happen.
Well, and I think, especially in our industry, the financial industry, financial security is never something that you advertise as a perk. People, your clients, assume that
They
you're
expect
secure.
it, right?
They expect it. That is never a bonus. It's a bare minimum. And
Mm-hmm.
so that begs the question of, what are the basic things that need to be put in place to protect ourselves from a cyber attack? Do you have any thoughts there?
Yeah, so that's where I founded Cyberhoot, was to address the weakest link in any chain. You hear that statement, right? If you pull on a chain, the weak link breaks. What is it in a CPA firm? What is it in any business? It's the person in the chair, right? Because hackers can get emails to the inboxes of end users. No matter how many filters you put in place, there's going to be a malicious link that gets through to the inbox. So, how do you prevent the user from clicking on that and introducing malware, ransomware, business email compromise to your environment? And the simple answer is, it's not rocket science. It's awareness training. It's a phishing test that is on that treat based side that we've kind of created at Cyberhoot, and we have a patent pending on it, incidentally, for the positive reinforcement based educational phish testing. Those are two things that are really front and center to addressing any business's lowest, easiest solution to harden your environment. Now, there are all kinds of technical measures that go beyond what I'm talking about here, but from the end user's perspective, training them regularly, not once a year. The analogy I use, Lara, is like going to the gym. If you go to the gym once a year for 5 hours, you're going to hurt yourself at best. You're not going to have any meaningful effect, and you'll be sore for days and weeks. But if you do consistently go to the gym, say once or twice a week for the year, you're going to be able to build that muscle memory, build the culture of cybersecurity within your firm. And it's not
Mm-hmm.
hard. We're not talking hours of training. We're saying once a month, like if you used our automated program, you enroll your users once a month, the beginning of the month, they get a 5-minute video that teaches them on some cyber literacy topic. It could be social engineering, phishing, password hygiene, multi-factor authentication. There's some core concepts that are repeated over and over again, no different than going to a specific machine in the gym and doing it a few times each week. You're going to build that muscle memory and teach the users how to protect themselves with confidence, efficiency, and security in processing email in their inbox. Once you get through that, you must continue it on an ongoing basis. 5 minutes a month is all it really takes in these
Mm-hmm.
firms that we experience, that we use in our system. The fish testing that we do is a level above what's available in the industry, though, at Cyberhoot, because we are examining an email with each end user, and we're taking it apart into its individual components. What's the sender, and what should I be looking for to determine if it's a legitimate sending email for a Netflix email or a business partner's email. The subject line, what can and can't we determine from the subject line, and the greeting, and then spelling, punctuation, and grammar, right? Language quality, and then urgency, emotionality, and a fear of missing out. These reactionary things that hackers bake into their emails to get you to react without thinking and click, oops, oh no, what did I do? Links to external websites and attachments. Those 7 components are pieces of the phishing puzzle. And if you can teach your users to construct those pieces into a clear picture of phishing, you've taught them successfully how to phish. And instead of what all too happens today in other businesses that I walk into and they say, we don't like phish testing, it makes our users angry. It's because they're using the shock collar approach that I mentioned earlier. And those end users are anxious in their inbox because they don't want to make a mistake, but they don't know how not to make a mistake. With
Mm-hmm.
the method that I just described, you get a crystal clear picture. I like to tell people, we teach people how to phish and
Yeah, you
feed.
flipped the model on its head.
Yeah, we teach them how to phish. We feed them for a lifetime of processing email in their inbox, personally and professionally, instead of giving them a phish for today and it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
go to tomorrow or next week. So that's the first part of any business out there, is you have to focus on your users and you have to do it right away. What often happens, Lara, is someone gets into, you'll hire someone new in your firm. What's the first thing they do? They call their family, say, hey, I got this great new job at this awesome CPA firm. Maybe that's the first thing. The second thing they do is they go to social media and say, hey, look, I'm going to work here. And the
Mm-hmm.
moment they get their email address, hackers know, because they're monitoring social media, and they send an email from Lara Cooper. Hey, I have a top secret project for you. I want you to go buy some gift cards. Don't tell anybody, because
That's the big one.
we're giving them away to our staff as a quarterly bonus. Okay, so it's a secret mission. Use the company card, scratch the backs off, send me pictures of all these things. $100 gift cards, as many as you can get, because we have lots of people to give them to. Don't tell anyone it's a secret project. And they don't know any better. They want to make a good impression with you, the CEO of the company, so they go out and buy it. I mean, I'm not kidding when I tell you, one of the founding messages of Cyberhoot is these $26,000 in gift cards that happened on that very scenario.
Oh
A
my
new person
word.
started at a local firm that I was working with. They're $100 each. I don't know if you can see, there's
Oh, I
$100
can see
per
them at
card.
the talk.
That's a lot of cards, a lot of money, and a maxed out credit card.
That's brutal. I mean, devastating for obviously the card holder,
Mm-hmm.
devastating for the employee that fell for it,
Mm-hmm.
and all too common. I have seen
Happens all the
that
time.
specific scam
You've
so
seen it,
many times. Oh, yeah, in my own inbox. I've seen that specific one
right?
multiple times, and it looks so real. And I mean, back in the day when you worked in the office, primarily you'd say, "Oh, hey, Dave, did you send me this?"
Right.
But now working remotely, you don't necessarily have that opportunity as
Exactly right.
accessible. But I like that. I like the way that you flipped that model, because before it's okay, we're going to send a couple of phishing emails. You won't know when, you don't know what it is, but you have to recognize it, and that's it's a test as such, and said, excuse me, essentially. But saying, hey, we're going to teach you how to build this, it turns into something very interactive, and more than likely they'll become that much better versed in it. So
Exactly right.
that's a really nice approach.
Thank you. We
Yeah.
think so, and a lot of our clients. Here's another statistic from our own coffers. We track thumbs up and thumbs down on every assignment that we send out to our 65,000 users today in the platform. We have 53 today. 53% people say they actually enjoyed our phishing test. If you go
Nice.
to any other product on the planet, you'd be hard pressed to find 1% of the people who say, I love getting trick emails in my inbox to stress me out, to make me think I'm going to fail a test, and 3 strikes in a bank, you're fired, right?
Mhm.
In accounting firms, it might be, similar. The reality is we haven't done a good job of teaching people, giving them the skills to confidently identify these things before we test them. You don't go to school, you didn't graduate from CPA college And the first day in class, they tested you on what you had to know to pass to graduate. They
Mm-hmm.
taught you over time, and then you pass the test at the end, the bar and the AMA, the medical test, and then your CPA test after they taught you the skills that you needed. But in cybersecurity, because it's an emerging field, people have kind of got the cart before the horse here. It's a little backwards. We want to test you on things you might never have been properly taught, and it stresses you out, it makes you anxious, and it doesn't make you a better human firewall. So these
No.
are things that CPA firms out there have to embrace, because that third largest economy in the world is only that large because it's working so well. And
Right.
that is a self-fulfilling prophecy. People in all sorts of disadvantaged countries in the world that don't have a living wage can turn to cyber crime to make a reasonable life for themselves. Not even reasonable, a really good life for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, who can blame people who have no other opportunity but to turn to these methods to earn an income, a living, to feed their families. And it's
Right.
growing leaps and bounds because it's generating so much income.
Right. It's working.
Yeah.
Why, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we definitely drives home the point how much we need to protect ourselves.
Mhm.
So if one is starting out in cybersecurity, and even based on this conversation, 20 minutes so far, I can appreciate how much is behind the curtain that you've just simplified to teach your users, to teach your customers, to say, here's the low hanging fruit, here's how to protect yourself. We'll handle the rest. But if someone is starting to consider cybersecurity for their business or even themselves personally,
Mhm. Mhm.
where do they go? Where do they look? Where do they begin? Because there's obviously a lot more to this than just one 5-minute video.
Sure. Well, first of all, we give Cyberhoot away free to individuals. So anyone listening to this that wants to bootstrap their own knowledge, simply go to HTTPS secure cyberhoot.com/individuals. And you can sign up for our foundational 6 videos and one of our innovative phishing simulations to teach you those components of an email, the indicators that you need to be aware of. And that's free. Anybody can do that. Send it to your family, your friends, anybody that you think could benefit from that. And we don't charge for that. This, our goal is to make the world a little better place if we can. The hope being, if you like it and your business needs it, then you'd bring it back to your CPA firm, that sort of thing. But for others that are already running a business that might be listening to this podcast, talk to your MSP, your managed service provider, or your IT department. Say, what are we doing to help our human firewalls be prepared for the attacks they face? Because I'm reading a lot of breaches in the news. I want to make sure we're doing the right things. And if they don't have a good answer, point them to Cyberhoot. Point them to us. Sales@cyberhoot.com is a simple inquiry. We can reach out to you, do a demo. We give Cyberhoot away to anybody free for 30 days. So you can always try it. And if you don't like it, you can leave. Let's say you sign up for Cyberhoot and you get past the 30 days, you pay your first couple of months, and it's just not working for you. Well, we do month-to-month contracts at Cyberhoot, which is unusual in the industry, partly because we own the company ourselves. I'm the co-founder from 10 years ago. We haven't taken any venture funding, so we don't have to make every nickel and dime on every person that we work with. We can just sign month-to-month contracts. So it's kind of a no-risk scenario to work with us. But your IT team, your MSP should have a solution in place. If it's not ours, then it should be someone else's that does the awareness videos, the phish testing. But unfortunately, most people don't know about the positive reinforcement method of phish testing, and they're always on the negative side. So that can be a little bit, there's a Goldilocks problem there. You can make it too easy and people are insulted. You can make it too hard and people are ready to quit because you promised them a raise at Christmas time and it was a phishing test. Oh my gosh, bad idea. It's hard to get it just right with those phishing tests in the traditional attack methodology. And that's why, again, with Cyberhoot, it's fully automatic. So we've tried to make it so it's set and forget. You just enroll your users and they're trained, they're tested, they're reported on, the compliance is there for FINRA, for any kind of compliance obligation that you have, cyber insurance included, you're good to go. Now, you're right though, Lara. There's a lot of other things. So if you're a business owner and you say, "Oh, I am training, I am testing, and I've got governance policies written around a password management policy, adoption of password managers," that's another really good tip for anyone out there. If you have not learned to use a password manager, do that
Noted.
as soon as possible. It's the only way to really manage all your massive amounts of passwords wherever you go and keep them long and strong and unique, and tie them to multi-factor. But get a risk assessment. Hire a third party to do a risk assessment of your business. They're going to ask you, well, what critical data do you have? Where does it live? And how are you protecting it in transit and at rest in your business? And if you can't answer those questions, it's a good idea to figure that stuff out, because you should be backing that data up. You should be encrypting it at rest, encrypting it in motion. You should limit who has access to it. Those kinds of things are going to be teased out in a risk assessment. And that risk assessment will help you decide, with your limited budget and limited time, what should I spend these things on first that's most helpful to the overall security of my business. Because going back to the snake oil salesman, they'll say, "Oh, you need to buy EDR," and I'm just making that up. Endpoint detection and response 24/7, so monitored by a set of human eyeballs and AI that says if something goes bump in the night, we're going to call you and stop that attack from proceeding. It's not a bad idea. EDR is a great thing, and MDR is even better. Managed detection and response, where they manage the incident for you while you're sleeping and things like that. That might be the greatest thing that you could do. But how do you know if all your users are reusing passwords and there's no multi-factor turned on your VPN and on your critical email accounts? Doing the EDR is like, that's too late. The fox is in the hen house eating the chickens.
Mm-hmm.
I've got all these old analogies because my dad was a farmer and he's 87. So
They're
this is
good though.
all.
They're very relatable.
So, but at the end of the day, that's what a business owner should do, is maybe do a risk assessment to identify where they should spend their limited time and money on the most egregious risk first. I happen to know, having done hundreds of risk assessments in 30 years of this, that the person in the chair is going to end up bubbling up to the number one risk most of the time, because the other things are easy to turn on: multi-factor, adopt the password manager, make people set unique passwords wherever they go. There's a few technical measures that you can do as well. Those things can be quickly addressed. It's still the person that clicked on that phishing link that caused the majority of the problems today.
Human error. So that was going to be one of my questions: is do you perform, or does your company perform risk assessments, or do you recommend anyone that does, if that is the first step that someone needs to take?
We do. We do have about 30% of our business at Cyberhoot is professional consulting. So virtual CISO, fractional CISO, Chief Information Security Officer. And every one of our engagements starts with a risk assessment, because even though we could go in and start prescribing activities, we want to just turn over all the rocks first, understand
Mm-hmm.
your business really, really well, so that we know, oh, hey, we have 10 audits a year and they always ask these 5 questions, that we answer those 5 questions in the work that we do, so that you can always look good and protect the data that's entrusted to you by your clients. So we want to build a really good program. So risk assessment is what we start with. The challenging part is that we're having too much demand. So it's, if we got 10
Time to raise
calls
prices.
tomorrow, it's hard to meet the demand. We have a lot of subcontractors, 1099s, that we're building in under our processes here that we do. We have it all documented. We've got checklists, to make sure that we deliver in a very efficient manner. But finding this, so another statistic out there is there's probably close to 5 million cybersecurity jobs in the world that are unfulfilled right now. In other words, people are looking for people to work in cybersecurity and they can't find them. It's an emerging market. I wish my kids would get into it. I wish more people would get into it, because
You
there's a
need the help, don't you?
yeah, we do.
Just
We
hire
do.
the kids.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
funny. Well, it seems like you've done a really wonderful job of educating the public, because there is a demand for it. People need the services. They value the services if they're keeping you busy. And I'm very grateful that you're sharing some of your resources for free, because business owner or not, individuals are always at risk. And so that's something I'm going to keep in my back pocket
Mhm.
for those that could use the support. So thank you for sharing. We're coming up on about the 30-minute mark. So before we exit out of this, do you have any final words of wisdom for our listeners, or advice?
People have asked me if you could do one or two things as an individual to secure your life a little better, what would they be? And if it was one thing, I would say turn on multi-factor authentication on your critical accounts, so banking and email and those sorts of things. However, that's been my pat answer for a decade. However, there was a massive breach last month. Almost 3 billion records were released, financial records in the United States. And I searched my credit card, my social security number was tied to 10 records in that breach. And so I got to thinking about this. And I think the most important thing that anyone out there could do is freeze their credit now,
Mm.
um, not monitor. You can hear about LifeLock and this other place, and they'll all monitor and tell you when Lara's credit has been changed in any way. It's too late then. If you freeze it, guess what? No one anywhere can take out any credit in your name. So your credit score doesn't change, but they can't monetize it if it's frozen. So, the credit agencies are all like, shh, by law, we have to let you freeze your credit, but we're not going to tell you about that because we can't monetize it and our whole business would die.
Good
Freeze
tip.
your credit. There's a video there's actually an article, and we have a blog too that we blog every week, so you can subscribe to our newsletter at cyberhoot.com/newsletters and you'd find out all about this. But if you go to cyberhoot.com/blog and you search on identity theft, you'll learn that there's not just 3 credit agencies that you have to freeze your credit at. There's like 4 major ones and 4 or 5 secondaries. That's where this big breach happened. It was at one of the secondary credit agencies where they lost all this data. So you have to freeze it at 7 to 10 different places. You can buy insurance against credit identity theft. That's probably becoming one of the more important things that your users will want to do, is to freeze their credit, because it's not hard to unfreeze it. When you go to, I went and bought a car with my daughter, and the car dealership said, "We're going to pull your credit." I said, "Oh, you can't. It's frozen." "Oh, well, we use Experian." So, okay, this dealership has permission to pull my credit at Experian for today, and tomorrow automatically freeze it again. And so I just made the phone call or went to the website, logged in, and unfroze my credit for that one event. And I had my car. My daughter had her car, her first car. So these things happen. It's not hard, but you need to do your homework, and you can learn some of the steps at cyberhoot.com/blog, and just search for identity theft, and you'll get a whole article on why it matters. And this article, interesting, was written 4 or 5 years ago when there was the breach at Experian. Experian was breached. Citibank was breached. They had an incident. There's so much information on the dark web right now that anybody who wants to find out information about you, Lara Cooper, and take out credit in your name probably can find the right details. It's just a matter of them focusing on you and taking out credit in your name. So freezing it prevents that. So that's my new number one. That
That's
puts
a
number
good
two at, what's
good
that?
number one. That's a
Yeah,
good number one, because that's pretty nerve-wracking.
it can be.
Yeah.
And so the second would be turn on multi-factor, and the third would be, if I had it, adopt a password manager. That would be the third. Those
Okay.
top 3 for an
Don't
individual.
don't let the fox into the hen house in the first place, essentially.
Right.
Makes
Exactly.
sense. Well, once this podcast goes live, I'm definitely going to link the newsletter, the blog, and then just the website in general, because that's all good information for everyone to have. But it definitely drives the point home that this fly by the seat of your pants approach just isn't going to work. You
It's
have
not
to
going to
be
work.
strategic about it so that you're not doing damage control.
Yeah, if you're not going to do, you have to do the strategic part now, because a little bit of prevention is worth a pound of cure is an old thing, but it's
Mm-hmm.
really true. And in the financial industry that your listeners are probably all in, or many of them are, it's going to be required. If there's not New York State FINRA legislation that says you have to hire a CISO and you have to know your cybersecurity protections, and it's a board responsibility and a CEO responsibility, not IT. If that hasn't happened in your state or wherever you're at, it's coming. And when that happens and you go looking for these resources, guess what? everyone else is looking for them too because it's mandated. So the time is to get ahead of it now. Spend a little bit of time researching it. Find your virtual CISO. There's other sites I can give you. I run a peer group of virtual CISOs and fractional CISOs. Fractional CISO is another one. .com is another place you can get resources. There are many others out there. All you have to do is search for virtual or fractional CISO, and you'll find firms that can start with that risk assessment and do that if we can't help you at Cyberhoot.
Good to know. Thank you for the wealth of information. I think this is going to be very beneficial. Well, I appreciate you coming on. Once
My
again,
pleasure.
thank you for listening and being a part of the accelerator. And until next time. Okay.